What's good, y'all? It's your boy Habit. Final round. Now, I already know. Bring it on. I already know I'm gonna get the criticism. I know you're gonna call me crazy. I already know. You said that to me when I was adamant about Crawford beating Spence. Okay. But the next fight that should happen, okay, with the exception of one, and I'll bring that up later. The biggest threat to Bud Crawford right now is the guy you're watching on your screen. I want to see Bud versus now. Make it happen now. Now, there's another fight that I think could be potentially on the horizon and makes the most sense, even more than this one. Not competitively as much as this one, but I think makes the most sense in terms of money. And that's Canelo versus Bud. I think that makes the most sense. It makes the most sense for both of them in terms of resume, in terms of money. Even if one of the fighters lose to each other, you're losing to a Hall of Fame type fighter. This fight, it's going to generate lots of money. Crawford's now probably a pay-per-view draw. We know Canelo's a pay-per-view draw. That fight makes the most sense, but there's a few things that have to manifest before that goes down. And I'll tell you what, competitively, I think Bud wins that fight against Canelo. Okay? But the biggest threat competitively to Bud Crawford right now is Boots Ennis. I'm telling you, and you're not going to believe me, just like he didn't do with Spence versus Crawford. You're going to say, oh, he doesn't have the resume. You said that about Crawford. You're going to say, he doesn't have the resume. He doesn't have the experience. You said that about Crawford. Okay? And I'm going to come full circle. So stick with me on this. Okay, you're going to tell me that Boots isn't ready. He doesn't have the resume. He doesn't have the experience. But you told me that Spence has a significantly better resume than Bud Crawford. He had Mikey Garcia. He had Danny Garcia. He faced a prime Kell Brook. Spence faced a prime Sean Porter. And we can keep on going on Spence's resume and experience. But yet Spence, the big dog, the big fish with all the experience and the big resume, got completely outclassed this weekend. So tell me how your theories make sense. Tell me how your boxing logic makes sense. Stop putting all your stock in resumes and experience. First off, there's plenty of veteran fighters with significantly more experience that lose to inexperienced fighters or guys that don't have the resume or the vast amount of experience. Obviously, because being younger, or you correlate inexperience with youth in the fight, right? I'm not saying these aren't factors in the fight. They will be factors in the fight if a fight like Bud versus Boots goes down. Okay, it will be a factor. But what I'm trying to say, this is the biggest threat to Bud, and it's gonna be a competitive fight. This fight will probably be what we thought Spence versus Crawford was going to be. It probably will be that. Maybe better. Boots is not going to be, I don't want to hear he's inexperienced or he doesn't have the resume. This guy has been fighting all his life, okay? He was born in the ring. Let's put it like this. Bud and Boots are very similar. They're not the same, but they're very similar. Okay, in this matchup, we're not going to get a slow prodding style like Spence, who's one-dimensional and puts pressure and comes forward. You're going to get almost a carbon copy of Terrence Crawford facing himself. Maybe a more younger, youthful version, and maybe more athletically talented, and maybe more rangier. I think Ennis is pretty huge for his division and rangy. The only difference is he doesn't have as much experience and he doesn't have the big names on his belt yet. I don't care about that though. Will the fight be competitive, and can Boots present the ability? Can he win? Yes, he can. Now, I'm not picking Boots. If this fight ever goes down, I'm not saying I'm picking Boots to win. But I might. But it will be a competitive fight. And that's what we want to see. And a lot of you idiots out here will say, well, he's not ready. He's not experienced. Okay, how did that work out for Spence? Even though he had the resume and the experience. He looked like an amateur this past weekend. So don't give me that. He's more than ready. He comes from a boxing family and lineage just like Crawford. He's athletically talented just like Crawford. He has a unique frame for his weight division just like Crawford. He's a switch hitter, just like Crawford. Maybe more fluent and natural in his switching. Okay, not as methodical and high IQ'd as Crawford, but very fluent in his switching when he switches stances. He has power, just like Crawford. He has speed, just like Crawford. He has combinations, just like Crawford. He has different styles he can implement. He fights on the inside, outside, mid-range. Okay? But just like you're seeing right now, he has a good chin. He's been hit. Okay? He takes risks just like Crawford. You're looking at two very similar fighters going up against each other. The biggest threat to Terrence Crawford is Boots Ennis. I don't care what you say. Look at the details. Look at the technique. Look at the stylistic matchup. Okay? This is not a slow, robotic fighter like Spence going up against Crawford. This will be like Crawford going up against himself. Does Crawford have the advantage? Of course he does. I'd probably pick Crawford to win. But I would love to see this fight. And if you're Boots, strike while the iron is hot. You don't need to wait. What are you waiting for? Why are fans saying, well, he needs to wait? It's just, he needs to get more. No, he doesn't. That obviously didn't do anything for Spence. This is boxing. The longer you wait, the worse, probably. You're taking more punishment. You're taking more damage. You are ready. Boots is ready. You're a top contender. Take the fight. You have nothing, and if you're Boots, you have nothing to lose. We know Bud's not going to duck anything. And so far, it seems like Boots is hungry. But we'll see. Maybe he gets presented an opportunity. Maybe there's an opportunity for him to make this fight happen with Bud soon. Take it. I don't think Boots is going to duck. But if he gets the opportunity, take it. Take it. Screw what the fans are saying. Would it be ideal for Boots to get 3 more championship-level fighters on his belt and age Crawford out to 38, right? Yeah. And if that happened, I'll give Boots a significant chance of winning just because of the age. And, if he gained that experience against championship-level fighters, I'll give him a significant chance at winning that fight. I think youth would be on his size and talent. That doesn't even matter. The point I'm trying to make is that strike while the iron is hot if you're Boots. And fans, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. He's more than ready. He's as ready as he's ever going to be. And actually, if you present him with this fight, I think he's going to be more than ready and prepared. Now, is he going to be a little green? Sure. But not green in the sense that he's not experienced enough. He's going to be green in the sense that maybe discipline will play a role in that fight. Because you saw when Boots went up against Chikasi, the fighter he went up against before he faced Villa. Okay, a lot of people say, oh, Boots is a fraud. He didn't knock out Chikasi. Who's Chikasi? Nobody knows Chikasi. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, the fighter from the Ukraine. But, he dominated the fight. He walked him down the whole time. He beat Chikasi easily. But you got people saying because he didn't get the knockout, he's fraud. He's a fraud. That's stupid, you guys. And then you see Boots come back in his next fight and have a virtuoso performance against a guy who had a great win against Speedy Rashidi Ellis. That shows how quickly he can learn from his mistakes, because the mistake Boots made in the Chikasi fight was he was looking for the knockout. He wanted to put on a show. And I'll do a film study on that later. He wanted to put on a show. He was looking for the knockout. Very similar to what Teofimo Lopez did against Kambosos. Only Boots, obviously won the fight. And Teofimo paid the price in getting emotional in that fight. And I think that Teofimo was way more emotional than Boots was in that fight. I think Boots was trying to put on a show for the fans. I think it was trying to send a statement and get attention. But in doing that, I think he forgot to implement his game plan and stay disciplined in his boxing to set up for the knockout. Because you hear it all the time. Let the knockout come to you. You know, let the knockout come to you. Do not force it. That's how you get knockouts. You set up your game, you be patient, and if it comes, it comes. If it doesn't, then so be it. But if you start forcing shit, that's when the knockout gets away from you and you start to walk yourself into traps. The perfect example of watching that is seeing Teofimo against Kambosos. And that's the problem. But we see Teofimo came back. A lot of people quit on Teofimo. Teofimo came back against a great fighter, went up in weight class. You know, he's not cutting weight and draining himself anymore. And he learned his lesson. You know, I got to be patient and disciplined and stick with my boxing. I shouldn't rely on my athletic ability all the time. I shouldn't rely on my knockout power. That's the thing Boots has. That's the thing I would say Boots has to work on. If he gets more fights before he faces Bud, if that fight ever even manifests. He has to be disciplined and not falling in love with his power and his athletic ability and talent and getting knockouts. Box. But here's the thing. First of all, I think he learned that lesson when he faced Chikasi, because you saw in his next fight him correct that error. He got the knockout, he was patient, and he boxed. But here's another thing. People tend to think the toughest fights are your championship fights, and sometimes they are. But some of the toughest fights are against the no-name guys that nobody knows, okay? The contenders that nobody knows, like, you know, that top 10 range of guys who are fighting to get in that contender spot. Sometimes those are the toughest fights. And here's why. Because a lot of the times you take these guys for granted. You're so focused on getting that championship belt and aiming for the championship that you overlook some of these guys who are great fighters. Just because you don't know these guys' names don't mean they're not good boxers. You know, I heard people criticize Crawford for facing Benavidez. Oh, he's one-legged. Who's Benavidez? He's not that good. You know, I heard people criticize Crawford for facing Indongo. I heard them criticize Crawford for facing Mean Machine and having trouble with Mean Machine. And, you know, they talked about Gamboa. They talked about all these fighters and who was that? Victor Postol. Oh, well, Crawford struggled with some of these guys and he got clipped at times. And these guys aren't even big name fighters like Mikey Garcia and Danny Garcia. And it's just like nothing. What are you talking about? I can make an argument that Crawford had the better resume in the tougher fights because of the stylistic matchups. Mean Machine's a hell of a fighter, man. Victor Postol, good fighter, solid fighter. Okay? They're very skilled technical boxers. Okay? Just because they're not particularly the big names doesn't mean they're not tough fighters. Marvin Hagler at one point was a no-name guy. Nobody paid attention to him. He was not Sugar Ray. It took a while for Marvin Hagler to get to the status that he got to. He was just sitting there grinding, you know, in the snow. Nobody cared about him. And then he became Marvin Hagler. Some of the toughest fights are those contenders trying to find their way in that top position. The thing is, if Boots took a fight with Bud, he's going to be prepared for that fight. He's going to train his ass off because in his head, he knows this is the fight of his life. And this is the toughest opponent he's ever going to go against. He will be more than prepared. Stop using your nonsensical logic of resume and experience. Okay? Strike while the iron is hot. Boots, if you get an opportunity, take the fight with Terrence Crawford. And let me tell you why. You got nothing to lose. If you lose to Terrence Crawford, you lost to a Hall of Fame fighter, legendary fighter, who's undisputed in 2 weight classes. Your career is not over. Your career is not over. And shame on you boxing fans for thinking that a fighter needs to go undefeated to be great. Was that the case for Canelo? He lost to Mayweather. He's still a great fighter. He's still putting on big pay-per-view matchups. Still a champion. Just because if Boots takes this fight and he loses, it doesn't mean his career is over. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You lost to Bud. Take the fight. You have everything to gain and little to lose. And here's the thing. If you just make it competitive, you win. You win in a sense. If you just make it, and then especially after the performance Spence put on, if you are competitive, you look significantly better. Y'all thought I was crazy when I said Boots beats Spence. Now it doesn't sound so crazy anymore, right? I said that a while ago and y'all thought I was crazy. I'm telling you, Boots can compete with Crawford. I'm not saying he necessarily beats him, but he can compete. And he's more than ready enough. If he can get 3 more fights against championship caliber fighters and age Crawford out, yeah, that's perfect. That's great. But he can take the fight right now. He has nothing to lose and everything to gain. And if you win, you're undisputed. Now you're the top dog and you're young. Who's going to be in position to beat this guy? He's going to be reigning. He's going to have to move up multiple weight classes just to have a threat. Take the fight. You have everything to gain, little to lose. You win, you are the king. You are the king. And then on top of that, you might get a rematch with Bud, and then you can make more money. You will be the king. You have little to lose. Now, obviously, this is a fight for Bud that is not very ideal for him. Not because I'm saying he would lose, but there's a lot of risk that Bud has to take facing Boots. And he gets little reward, little value for beating Boots. The fight that makes the most sense for Bud is Canelo. If Canelo can get past Charlo, that's what makes the most sense. And the less risk. But if Bud is really chasing greatness, I would love to see this matchup. This would be like watching Street Fighter or real life Mortal Kombat. You have 2 fighters. Look at the styles and the techniques. Look at the matchup. They're both very similar. It would be a crazy fight. I don't even know how to assess that fight. 2 switch hitters, speed, power, size, range, combinations, multiple. How do you even... I want to see this fight, and I want to see it now. If it can happen, please. And for you idiots out here saying, oh, well, Boots ain't ready, he shouldn't take the fight. Yes, he should. Shut up, you idiot. Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. He's more than ready. He's been fighting his whole life. He's from a boxing family, boxing lineage, very athletically talented, physically talented. Yes, he's a little green in the tooth, but he's more than ready. This would be a great matchup, more competitive fight than the last fight we saw this past weekend. And you know what? I just might have the balls to pick Boots in this matchup. We have an overcorrection now. We have an overcorrection. I'm not shocked at what happened this past weekend. A lot of people are, and a lot of these Spence fans are coming over. Oh, well, Crawford is pound for pound the best now. He's the greatest of all time, and nobody can beat him. Yes, there's somebody out there that can give him problems, and that's Boots Ennis. Mark my words. You heard it here first. Boots Ennis. Watch out. He's coming. He's a threat. Believe it or not. Like the video, comment down below, subscribe. Bring on the hate. I'm already ready for it. You'll figure out. I'm not lying to you. Get at me.